Hello there. Okay, so this is our second Scratch tutorial. In this one I'll be going over one of our Scratch lessons. This is where we left the last time. So basically I just showed, I just did an overview of the user interface, kind of what and how the blocks kind of work. And we also created a basic, animation of our character. So we can kind of move our character around. And we created a couple of, two different backdrops. And yeah, so it was just a real basics one. So now I'm going to show you one of our lessons that we made, and let's pick Olympic tennis, and we're just going to click OK and replace the content. So this is one of the games, well, one of the like Olympic style Scratch games that we made recently, and it will be a little bit easier now that I can explain things through having like one of the lessons done that I made. Again, as I said in the previous video, I'm a Scratch professional. I've created a couple of lessons, so I do hope this helps if you are getting into Scratch and you want to learn a couple of things about Scratch. Anyway, if you want to learn about the user interface, watch the previous tutorial. This one I'm not going to be covering the user interface. I'm more going to be covering the kind of coding behind this lesson, and just kind of reviewing a couple of things and how we did things with the sprites to get what we wanted. But yeah, so let's get into that, and I might show you another one of our lessons as well, just depending on how long it takes for me to explain this stuff. Okay, so this is our game. Let me go into full screen here. When you click start, it basically makes this ball go around, and it's kind of like an old school kind of Pong style game, where you basically have to move up and down. It's got two players, it's got two different player controls as well, and the actual ball itself is it kind of randomly selects where it's going to go. I'm just playing as both characters right now, it's pretty difficult, but yeah, so it's basically like a Pong style game, and I'm going to be basically explaining to you how we made this. Excuse me. So in the previous one I was explaining sprites, and sprites are always in this little panel over here, and backdrops are always in this section over here. So our backdrop for this one, if we click on backdrop, we have start screen and a tennis court. So the start screen is when before we start anything, we have the screen what explains the controls and stuff. And I mean, we just made this in Scratch, and we just use the text tool over here to input text across the screen. And then if we click on the backdrop itself and go out of this and go to code, you can see the basics of what's happening here. So we use an event. What is first? So we use one of our events over here. So our first event is when we click the green flag button on top over here. It triggers the code that is set in these little blocks below. So from the get-go, when we click our go button, we still have to input, we have to click space on our keyboard. And then what's going to happen is it's going to swap to our second backdrop that we made, was a tennis court backdrop. So if we go to backdrops, you'll see again that we have our main screen or start screen and our tennis court. So our code tells it here that when this is pressed, we go to our start screen first, then we wait until the space key is pressed on our keyboard, it then immediately switches the backdrop to tennis court, and then it waits a couple of seconds before the game actually starts. The hide variables 1 and 2, that's the top things over here. It doesn't actually hide, oh no, wait, no, the variables in this case over here are actually player 1 and player 2, because after we press start, you can see our little bars for player 1 and player 2 pop up over here, and that's what the variables are over here. The variables section is the section over here. You can make a variable and you can name it something, and then that variable can be like assigned to something per se. So if we click on player 1, player 1 is our variable of player 1 over here, is also our score that is being picked up over here, and then also we have a couple of movement controls here that I'll go over in a moment. But yeah, so backdrop is this over here. Our event triggers all the stuff below, and then our player 1 and player 2 is also being triggered by an event as well. So in our previous tutorial, I was covering, the basic movement commands, or the basic movement for like the coding for the movement in Scratch. This one is a little bit more advanced, but it's still touching on the same aspect of it though. So our player 1, we have a bottom, a border top and a border bottom. These sprites are important because if we didn't actually have this section of code over here and we made our first character move up, you see our character goes completely off of screen, what is not great, especially that we're playing like a Pong style game. So as I was saying in the previous tutorial, that when it comes to sprites, they're very versatile with how you use it, and they can be used for very important things. So as soon as we put on back our code there and we go back, you can see that our little player 1 and our player 2, they're not going to be able to escape past that bottom border, and this bottom border is a sprite. If you click on the border, you can see it actually highlights which border we're clicking on. It has no code in it, but because we're telling like our player 1 and player 2 that if it's touching one of those, it needs to go back to a specific X and Y coordinate, it stops our little player bats, or like our rackets per se, from being able to go off of screen, what is great. But yeah, so that's just that. Then for our actual player 1 itself, the code is kind of it's basic to somewhat of a degree with how we set it up. Sometimes you can use these operator variables, but become quite important when you're doing things involving speed or specific variables that you're trying to achieve. So we did use a couple of operators here. So change y by 0 minus speed would be one of our operators. So we took an operator and we dragged in our speed variable into the right side, and we put in 0 on the left side over here. I cannot put 0 in. Oh wait, sorry. So we need to take one of these. Where is it now? Which one would I have used? Sorry, it's been a while since I've done this. So I mean, it should actually just be that we can put in 0 there, but apparently it's just not. Change y by 0. Yes, sorry, okay, yeah. So what we did was we took a change y, and you can actually attach these operators into a change y. And I still can't put 0 in it for some reason, but anyway, we normally put 0 in there, but you can wrap some of your operators into motion commands, and these operators become pretty important the more that you want to like code something, or the more advanced your coding starts becoming. So yeah, so just realize that you can actually put a lot of things together, like with the if thens, anything with triangles you can put in there, and anything with a circle. So anything down here with circles, you could put into anything that has a circle as well. So even the go to X over here, we can literally put in our speed into that, or we could put this operator into it as well. So yeah, so you can actually start changing things together in different ways, and you can start using all these things. So again, anything that has this like a circle can be replaced by anything what looks like a circle. Excuse me. And then anything what has a kind of this triangle style over here, you can put it into anything that has a triangle as well, or into some of these circles over here. But mostly if there's like an if then, you can use triangles, but then you wouldn't be able to use an operator in an if then. So yeah, that's how you start getting a little bit more advanced with this stuff. Anyway, so our player 1 is basically this. So our W is changes the Y speed, our S changes the Y speed. If we're touching the top or the bottom, because our movement of our racket per se, or player 1 bar, is only up and down. So we're only going on the X and the Y axis here, and this B top and B bottom is, as I explained to you, it just stops the little thing from going out of the sides. So yeah, so I mean that's this one, and then the ball is pretty advanced, but again, you can just take one of our lessons, you can look at them, and you can see how we started chaining things together and started like the whole coding process behind it. Again, like I'm not professional enough to explain like every little detail of Scratch to you, but use some of our lessons to kind of get an understanding of what's happening when it comes to learning about Scratch. Now, I'll show you a little bit more of a basic lesson, what is just kind of more off of what we made the last time. And this just involves one sprite, or one, like one character, and it just involves a right arrow, a left arrow, an up arrow. So if we do click our start button, you will see that our character can move left, or right and left, so X positive, X minus, and also has a little bit of a jump, like a jumping animation as well. Our backdrops in this one are like a touch more sophisticated. So what we did was, as you can see, like you only have, you always will only have like one screen in quotations that you're on the entire time. Now if you want it to look like your kind of your backdrops are changing to different backdrops or something like that, you can create different backdrops, and then you can have those backdrops kind of like look like it's animating and changing. So for example, this one we used a little dot over here, so anytime the Scratch character touches this dot here, it changes the backdrop, and then we just use a lighter color to change the next backdrop, and a little bit of a lighter purple to change the last backdrop as well. And as you can see, instead of it just having one screen, it looks like it changes environments every time, because it looks like our level's kind of progressing. And yeah, I mean that's just that was just using basically duplicating the same backdrop and then just changing a couple of the assets around to look new. And then, as I was saying, all the animation takes place with our sprite, or all our coding is just taking place with our sprite over here. And this command over here, or this line of code over here, is telling our character that if the orange of his his outfit, if it touches the purple, it changes backdrops and then resets the position back to this X coordinate here. Because remember, when you're moving your character, you're moving it on the X coordinate, like left and right, and then like minus X will be on the far left side, and then positive X will be on the far right side, or in the middle, or 0 will be in the middle. But you'll see that what we did was we took this little purple dot, and every time we wanted it to change, we would make our character automatically go back to an X coordinate and then change the backdrop, and then it just would do that the same every time. We just used a different lighter shade of purple, and then our last finishing line is, as soon as our character's foot, his orange foot, touches the white, it basically ends the game and says easy, and that goes for 1.5 seconds. So basically over here we use movement, and also remember that all these all the commands, all the blocks, they all have specific coloring to what they do. So like the blues will always be motion, anything to do with motion. The purples will always be anything to do with looks, or or the character or something like that, like the physical look of the character. Sounds are always with pink. Events will always be triggered with, and they always look like this yellow. Any controls are always orange. Sensing happens with a different color of blue, so it's a lighter blue shade. Operators are always green, and variables are always like a darker orange. So again, if you want to learn a little bit more about Scratch itself, just pop into some of our lessons and just review the code that we wrote for it, or the code that we kind of joined together for it, and you'll start seeing how we thought about doing like different things with Scratch, and trying to make it look either more animated, or bring a little bit more immersion to it, or if you just want to learn how to make like a basic character move along how it does now. You can always just disconnect some of our code here and then remake the code next to it, so you can achieve the same outcome. But again, through doing it like that, you're learning more practically than just like reading what we did. So try to remake it. There are lesson instructions included for all of these as well, and I do highly recommend just playing out and trying to do some of our Scratch lessons, because the Scratch tutorials that I wrote were pretty in depth with how things are done. So yeah, I would recommend doing that, and just jumping into some people's Scratch lessons and see how they thought about doing coding in Scratch, and that will help you tremendously with learning Scratch in general. Anyway, that's our second tutorial. I don't think there's going to be any more than this, so just if you're unsure about the UI, watch the first tutorial. If you want to learn a little bit more about Scratch, then either just rewatch this tutorial, try out our templates and read our task cards or lesson instructions for our Scratch lessons. And if there's anything further that we haven't covered in our Scratch lessons that you want to do, then just doing a little bit of research will help a lot. Anyway, thank you very much. Enjoy your day. Bye.